Yeah, hello and welcome to my talk. Secure through immutable object storage and other SAN techniques. And with immutable object storage or storage, I'm talking about techniques or ideas to make it somehow impossible to delete data over a predefined period of time, even for administrative personnel. My name is, let's have a look. My name is Joerg Riether. I'm employed in IT departments of large companies, more than 10,000 employees for more than 20 years now. I'm 7 years vExpert. I'm working with VMware, even with the original VMware product called actually VMware since 1.0. I think that was 1999. I work many stuff in data center since ESX 2.0. Guess that was 2002, 2003 or something like that. Many stuff in InfoSec, data center storage, focus on, and always have a deep focus on innovative data backup and restore ideas. And I attended all VMworld Europes, including the very first in Cannes with Diane and Mendel. So I'm making the observation these days that companies invest dramatically in IT security, be it like certifications, distributed and learning detection and prevention feeds, other mathematical protection models on the endpoint or distributed. And the core problem I see is that the trust in such techniques often leave the topics of the classical protection, so-called the backups, stagnating on an outdated thinking model. And this, what I would call step model review, is unfortunately also seen in large and financially potent companies. So if attacks, and you all know this, if attacks are successful, the consequences for the company are often fatal. And that can go so far that the company as a whole is threatened in its very existence. So the obvious first, a SAN is not an offline storage. And maybe I should put something first. Usually I would talk about very special things and I would go very deep dive into that. And today I'm more like, because this topic seems very important to me, I'm more like a little bit more general. So a SAN is not an offline storage and also not with tricks. SAN snapshots are no backup, even if some people may believe it, and some vendors may say it. So SAN replicas are not either, and it makes no difference if they are synchronous or asynchronous. And what about cloud storage? Yeah, I can totally secure cloud storage, right? That is what you hear very often these days. But please always remember, cloud storage is nevertheless always online, and attackers may have a lot of time. And we will come back to that time aspect later in the talk because it's very important, and many people seem to underestimate that. And what I hear quite often regarding cloud storage or cloud backups, I use manual MFA for every backup. Hooray! I don't want to go too deep into this. Just be aware of MFA can be broken in certain implementations and certain aspects. So what also is quite common, you hear these arguments like, I use object storage, no one attacks that. Because many people might think these are unusual protocols and authentication systems. People might think, okay, the usual ransomware and the usual attackers, they would go and look for AD and LDAP. They will put their Bloodhound on. They will check for CIFS and SMB and NFS and SSH. So my overall risk seems much lower with object storage. Perhaps even better in the cloud since it's far away and therefore somehow safer. And there are also these new immutable methods. Hey, this is even better, right? Many people think that. So, for example, S3 object lock or countless other ideas. And just on a side note, these ideas to make data immutable or undeletable, like with hardware and software, like with warm methods or something like this, these ideas are decades old. And those still very popular. And the immutable feature is the new hype saying, which you would hear everywhere these days. So often it's called the new miracle methods because you can save a lot of logics and logistics and money, obviously. So, but always ask yourself, where is the data really? The data has to be somewhere, even if in some hardware system, in some server, or on a distributed system, or on distributed storage, be it block, be it object, somewhere the data resides. And what about the operating system? Is it bare metal? Is it a commodity operating system? These aspects are very important. And even if everything goes well, always think about things like integrity and availability in case of problems or malware waves, and the bandwidth. Say, let's do a little calculation. Let's say we have 50 terabytes of data, compressed and deduplicated backup somewhere on the cloud. And I chose 50 terabyte because let's imagine a middle-sized company of about 8,000, 9,000 employees, a few mail servers, a few database servers, a little file services, SharePoint services. I think 50 terabyte is not that much these days. And let's say we are in a malware wave. So many customers wants to get their hands on their data urgently. And let's say our cloud provider guarantees us 100 megabit per second. So if you work in a big data center, you might say, wow, 100 megabit per second is very slow. On the other hand, if you live on the countryside like I do, you would say, wow, 100 megabit maybe very fast. In that case, just do a little calculation. I don't know. I know this is not exact science, but I think it's roughly safe to assume that with 100 megabit per second, you get around 1 terabyte in 24 hours. So let's say 1 terabyte in a day. So you would need at least 50 days to get your data. And this is always assumed the connection doesn't drop. And let's talk about cloud services availability, because the cloud is not always on. The cloud is not always available. Here are a few examples from 2020 regarding Microsoft Cloud, 2019 regarding Microsoft Cloud 2. Here we got something of a Google Cloud outage from 2020. Another one from Google Cloud. We got an AWS S3 multi-hour outage on 2017. We got another AWS one. This was 2021. That is an interesting one because it's some kind of backup cloud provider, and they have an outage too. These guys have outage too. Everyone has outage. So this was an interesting one. It was a 13-hour outage because a registrar killed a domain because a customer was hosting malware. So a customer of this vendor was hosting malware, and the registrar killed the vendor's domain. These things can happen, and these things happen all the time. And another very interesting one, you probably all heard of the big fire in the OVH data center. And Octavio Clava from the management board commented on Twitter, hey, our building is burning. The systems are they won't come back. So we recommend to activate your disaster recovery plan. And the very first reactions on Twitter, many of them were like, hey, how can we activate the disaster plan? Like someone was asking for, what button do I have to press, or what switch do I have to activate my disaster plan? Just to get an explanation, and a very clear and hard one from another user saying, hey, a disaster recovery plan is something you come up with, not a service OVH provides. So at the minimum, that would mean backup of your data hosted somewhere else. And that is a very important one. Another one did ask, did anything survive? Anything at all? Our data is an SPG2. What do we do now? Well, I would say, if you don't have backups somewhere else, and you have had your backups, if you had backups in the very same data center, I don't know what you do now. I really don't know. Maybe nothing at all, because maybe your company cannot survive this. So these are very important aspects to think about. Going on, another example with Microsoft. This time it was heavily related to storage. And if you look at the Azure status and the storage nodes, many of them, this case focuses on US, were all on status critical. These things can happen. And a very funny comment on Twitter I found from Shelter Kripo saying, Microsoft 365 down means I don't have email and I don't have Teams chat. As a manager, I am at a loss. Why do I even exist? Yeah. And yeah, I found this very funny. So yeah, what do we do now? Yeah, well, back to on-premises object storage. This any more secure? Any better? Well, many on-prem storage solutions are just flanged-on solutions on top of a normal OS file system, and thousands of additional artificial logic layers may be needed, which certainly don't help performance at all, as you can imagine. So the whole substructure is often just as vulnerable as before. And even if the substructure is bulletproof, always think about possible bugs in the S3 implementation itself. And you might ask, or you might argue that this is very hypothetical. I don't think so. Let's take a look of an example. This caught my eye while reading a newsletter, and it was in the Ceph storage implementation, and the bug description was able to circumvent S3 object lock using delete objects command. And I was like, huh? Delete objects command should be impossible when S3 object lock is turned on. And the description reads, Ceph supports S3 object locks, which of course prevents objects being deleted until the retention date has expired. However, it appears to be possible to circumvent this and delete objects before the retention date has passed by, using the option to delete multiple objects at once. Wow. Well, that was the point where I nearly dropped my cup of coffee, because think about it. The object lock mechanism works. So if you try to delete something, it will prevent you from doing it. But if you just issue the command to delete everything, it will delete everything, and that is a bug. And why do I point this out? Not to bash Ceph, quite the opposite. Ceph is a very, very outstanding, good, and powerful solution. I mentioned this here because think about other systems, other vendors, other storage solutions. Don't you think they don't have these bugs? Better think of this. They have these bugs. These bugs are everywhere. It's human-made software. There are bugs. So this is a very important thing to remember. So what do we do? Let's go back to on-premises block storage then. Yeah, that's the solution. And at that point, before I go into that slide deeper, I want to come back to what I mentioned at the very beginning when I was talking about time. Time an attacker has who has access to your network. So if an attacker has access to your network, don't ever think this attacker will light up all your IDS, IPS solutions like a Christmas tree. This will not happen if the attacker behaves intelligent and quiet. And the attacker will behave intelligent and quiet, believe me, especially these days. So an attacker who has access to your network don't have days or weeks. I'm talking about months. So let's say this attacker has 3-month time to get familiar with your network, with everything. He has access to all your mail system, to file system, to your SAN system, to the voice over IP system, can make phone calls in your name, can read mails, can write mails in your name. And much more important, this attacker has access to all your processes. This attacker don't need any Bloodhound or other screening systems to map your Active Directory. This attacker probably knows your Active Directory by that point better than you do. So this attacker can destroy your SAN system, even if he has to call the vendor. And I'm hearing quite a few ideas these days. So like that hypothetical idea, I'd like to point out here. Let's say you hear something like, my SAN manufacturer is super innovative and will build an erasure protection for snapshots, let's say everything under 48 hours, which can only be overridden by phone with my voice. An attacker has no chance, not even with full access to the SAN. Well, I just want to remind you that these days, voice deepfakes are no rocket science anymore. Not even close. So I don't think there are any very, very reliable ideas to prevent something like that. That is my point. And then there are these other people would argue, what's the point of this whole, we are so safe, it can never get us. And of course, we all know this is not correct, right? But I wanted to do this from a more scientific approach. So 2 years ago, I had done some research on this. On my old days, I wrote a master thesis about it. And one very key point of this is regarding protection against targeted and potent attacks, if someone really wants to get to you. And I say, and you can quote me on that all the time, because I deeply believe it. As of today, it is imperative to recognize that reliable protection against targeted and simultaneously potent attacks does not exist and will not exist. And I have translated my research questions here. So the efficient and functional data protection strategies with regard to current IT threats would be: everything aims at hard separation. Backups must be separated from any conceivable network access. Storage of backup media in a completely separate and self-sufficient environment. And data tapes and other external media is, of course, predestined for that. And the concrete recommendations for IT would be to use a separation of backup data from production data, use a remote vault, adapt logic and logistics, and that is a big one, because all the guys from the data center ops teams dealing with large data transfers to large streaming systems, they probably know that this is gargantuan, especially when you don't use an robot for manage your tapes. Because if you use a robot, an attacker might format this on a Friday night in 2 days, all your tapes, if the tapes are online accessible. So you have to introduce and map out source media, plus the corresponding processes. And you have to do an intense process check for actual runnability of these backups and the historic malware injection check also. And some recommendations for the CXO level would be the actual recognition of the danger posed by malware and attacks aiming at IT in general. And to go in the role of the CXO and define for myself from a senior management view, my RPO. So I have to think about how many missing data is tolerable for me, not for my IT, for me, for the management, and the RTO from the management point of view. So how long can my business survive without all my data? And these methods I mentioned before with the logic and logistics, these are extraordinarily cost intensive, especially not only technical, but also manpower, resources, HR resources. They are nevertheless intensive. Confrontation is obligatory from my point of view. And a major hypothesis I see in the coming 2 to 8 years is a little like an international renaissance, back to the roots. So return to strict use of autonomous media such as data tapes, storage away from any kind of electronic systems. And don't get me wrong, I don't want to get away from online backups, from disk-based backups, from SSD, NVMe-based backups, from cloud-based backups. Quite the opposite. These backups are extremely important. These days you can do many things with it, not only restore, but also test lab simulations, many ideas. So my idea is to focus on both. So all the online stuff you do today, plus all the disk-based stuff. In addition, the offline stuff, the real offline stuff. And I'm not talking about a tape changing robot. I'm talking about real offline stuff. And yeah, that can be quite intense. If you think about, let's say you want to back up 200 terabytes in one night. Think about how many machines you need, how many LTO streamers you need. If you would save to LTO tape, how many media you would need, how many bandwidth you would need. Can your infrastructure compensate this? This is very intense. And I also see an international increase in both non-targeted and targeted attacks on IT infrastructures in the coming 3 to 5 years. And I don't think you have to be a prophet to predict that, because we will definitely see that. But as I mentioned before, if someone really wants to get into your network, and aspects like money, logistics, knowledge are not relevant, this individual, this state, this agency, this whatever will get access. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner you can move forward to think about ideas how to deal with this, because you cannot prevent it. So the The master thesis, oh, there is a typo. The master thesis is published as PDF on my LinkedIn and Crossing page. Unfortunately, it's German language. I might translate it in the future, but you might, if you're really interested in it, you might find some online translation tool, or you can get back to me anytime if you want something special translated or want to talk about it. My channels are all available for that, so you can reach out to me regarding that anytime. Here I conclude, and thanks a lot.